We're going to be talking about relationship agreements and really going through exactly what Kyle and I did when he and I first got together to create a foundation for our love to sit on top of and to create a container that we could fill with the essence of who we both are and that could hold us as we grow together.
So that's why spoken or written agreements can be really effective in the same way that they are for a business.
Yeah. For us, I think it's about measuring the things that matter to us most. Why don't we have those for our relationships? There have been a lot of times where we needed to fall back on these agreements to remind us of what we committed to and why we're here and where we're going.
If you really care, you will spend time nurturing the foundation. How deeply you are willing to invest in the foundation to support its growth and long-term success.
We want our relationship to make a meaningful impact in the world. It's not just for us. It's for something larger than us, and that we are conduits of a deeper and bigger mission and message that want to be expressed in the world through our love and our relationship. If we want to maintain love, connection, polarity, then regulation has to be something you're paying attention to. Because the moment you become dysregulated, you fall into patterns of survival, scarcity, fight, flight, freeze, stress responses, shutdown, and disconnection. We return for connection after regulating.
Yes.
So there's always the reconnection after that space and that pause. Hey, you guys, welcome back to How to Stay Human. We are excited to bring you this episode today where we're going to be diving into a topic that I think is going to be super relevant for a lot of you, whether you are single or in a relationship. It doesn't matter where you are in your relational journey, but I think some of the things that we're going to talk about today will give you sort of a framework for how to be intentional in your relationships, especially if you're dating and you're looking to call in a partner, or if you're already in a relationship and wanting to bring even more intentionality and devotion to your partnership, because we're going to be talking about relationship agreements and really going through exactly what Kyle and I did when he and I first got together to create a foundation for our love to sit on top of and to create a container that we could fill with the essence of who we both are and that could hold us as we grow together. And so we're excited to talk about this because we posted about it on Instagram early on in our relationship, and it got so much interest from our followers and our audience. And so we thought it would be a great opportunity to kind of deep dive into this topic today and really take you through the steps of what we did and how we maintain these agreements in our relationship. So welcome to the show, and hello.
I want to take a moment to share about a powerful mental health resource that has been a total game changer for me, and that's Anywhere Clinic. For the past 2.5 years, I've been working with an online psychiatric provider, and the impact has truly been incredible because therapy isn't just a tool for crisis moments. It's a tool for personal growth, emotional mastery, and overall wellness. And with Anywhere Clinic, you can get virtual expert care from the comfort of your home. Whether you're exploring ketamine therapy, you need medication management, or just a supportive guide, it's time to prioritize you. And you can by visiting anywhereclinic.com. You can book an online appointment for as low as $120 or check and see if your insurance covers it. So go to anywhereclinic.com because your mental health deserves it.
Yeah, that was an epic kickoff as always. Such a treat to be back on How to Stay Human, and such a treat to be beside you and talking about something that's so incredibly meaningful to us. Today, the agreement of today was that I was going to wear my new clothes. Tori got these for my birthday about a month ago, and I've been resisting wearing them because I just sometimes get in patterns with the things that I wear, and I find myself just like going with what's simple. And so the agreement of the day was that I woke up and I was about to put on the clothes that I literally almost always wear, and Tori is like, really? You wear, like, don't you have more than 2 pairs of pants? And I'm like, yes. So the agreement of the day was that I'm going to wear the new clothes on the How to Stay Human podcast that Tori got for me. So thank you for these, baby. I'm loving our mini agreement of the day.
I had no idea this was an agreement, but
there was an unspoken agreement that was shared there. And I'm really excited to explore this further because I think on that note, in relationships, we have oftentimes so many agreements that are unspoken, right? And I think the conventional approach to relationship is that we just have a sense of what the other person's needs are. We have a sense of how to handle certain situations together. But the reality is, when you get yourself into a position where you feel dysregulated, where things feel ambiguous or unclear because of the state that you're in, it can be really, really difficult to reference back to the things that serve you most. For example, if I'm in a situation where I feel angry, upset, tired, hungry, sad, and so forth, and Tori and I are navigating something together, that intuitive sense of what serves me the most in that scenario might become very, very unclear to me, and everything else might cloud my ability to be able to navigate that conversation effectively. So that's why spoken or written agreements can be really effective in the same way that they are for a business. There's a great leader online, Dan Martell, that I've followed for years. He's an incredible technologist, executive investor, and so forth. And he kind of brought forward this concept, at least into my world, of treating your relationship like a business. And I think so many of us, when we approach our relationship, we approach it sort of haphazardly, right? We have a business that operates on KPIs and OKRs and systems and task management tools and Calendly links and time blocks and all these different tools that we can ensure that we show up for our business like we would a child, like we would a creation that we deeply care about. And oftentimes our relationship sits secondary to that and doesn't get the same intention and priority and I'm totally skipping over this. We do not operationalize, thank you, Kyle, our relationship in the same way that we do our business. And so our relationships can tend to struggle quite a bit when they don't have the ability to A, have a clear system for managing dysregulation, B, have a clear system for measuring the key questions to ask to ensure that their relationship stays on track. And lastly, when a relationship doesn't have a system for measuring if it is in an effective and healthy place, it can start to become really unclear. And I believe that's what creates early fractures in partnerships. So all that being said, really excited to dig deeper into this concept. I don't want to explore this through the lens of a business, but I do, particularly for our audience members that are founders and entrepreneurs and investors, I also want us to stay in that context for a moment, because I know the intention and the intensity that we bring to our business, and I want to start thinking about a relationship in the same way.
Yeah. For us, I think it's about, measuring the things that matter to us most. And just like with a business, you have a business plan to ensure the growth and the development of that thing. Why don't we have those for our relationships? Because what I've seen, and frankly, this was my experience until our relationship, we have these hopes and these desires for our relationships and what they could be, but we have no structure or system to ensure that that actually happens. And so what a lot of us find ourselves in is just hoping and praying and wishing for something, but not actually giving it like the legs to get there. Mm-hmm. And so what we're going to share today is really a strategy and a framework that you can apply and make your own, but it'll give you a look into exactly what we did and how much this has been supportive for us as we've navigated a lot of change. And as solid and as strong as we feel in our relationship, there have been a lot of times where we needed to fall back on these agreements to remind us of what we committed to and why we're here and where we're going, because this document, which is a living and breathing document, is how we point our ship towards the direction we want to go.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing for us with this too is that when we feel like something's off in the partnership, it's really easy to point back to what agreements aren't being met. So instead of having to, as Tori mentioned, hope and wish and guess about where we might be struggling, this gives us a way to be able to clearly identify, hey, I'm not being met in this way that we agreed to. Let's spend some time on this. And then also introduce practices for us to regain connection over the thing that we might have lost connection around, or repair rupture or disruption in the partnership. So I think at the end of the day, like what the intention behind the agreement more than anything is, it's simply put, I deeply care about the partnership and the longevity of it. Again, in the same way that when we create, as Tori mentioned, a business plans are designed for growth. The idea is I'm creating a plan so that I can sustain this business over the next 3 to 5 to 10 to 50 years. And what I've always said as it relates to life, business, relationships, is that if you really care, you will spend time nurturing the foundation. And if you don't feel that internal call to nurture the foundation, I would seriously put into question whether the thing that you're creating is the thing that you really want, or whether the relationship that you're holding is what you really desire. And a perfect example of this is I can look at previous relationships, as I'm sure Tori can, and say, I didn't create relationship agreements in this partnership. I didn't show up with intention in this partnership. And unsurprisingly, those people are no longer in our lives. It's not because they are bad people. It's because they weren't the right people for us. So an easy way to evaluate whether something is meant for you is how deeply you are willing to invest in the foundation to support its growth and long-term success. And again, that applies to business life, and of course to relationships. So all that being said, I think this is a great time to describe a little bit more about what relationship agreements actually are. I think it's easy to understand the concept. I think it's easy to understand it conceptually. That's a better way of describing it. It's a set of things that are on paper that say, this is what we agree to. But I think that the thing that I noticed with agreements, and these aren't just agreements in in relationships, but also in business, is that there's not actually a system for utilizing them and updating them and continuing to rely back on them. One of the things that Tori was mentioning earlier is that relationship agreements are best lived on a Google Doc or a shared note, because they often evolve and change over time. I mean, I have friends that have 50 to 60 page relationship agreement that are constantly growing. And so, which is a crazy thing for sure. But the idea here is that we want to make sure that relationship agreements have the opportunity to continue to evolve. They are a living and breathing tool that we use. And secondarily, that there are really, really clear systems to be able to put them in place. So all that being said, I like to think of the relationship agreements less as an actual set of agreements and more as an operating system for how we can navigate certain elements of our partnership. And so when we were going through the process of creating these agreements, I think the biggest thing was that we wanted to be able to use them probably more than anything to navigate the scenarios when we are feeling dysregulated, ruptured, disrupted, or in need of some sort of repair. And so when we started to draft these agreements, a lot of them were centered around how to navigate challenging moments together. That then took us down a path of sort of categorizing the agreement so that we knew, hey, when we're in a scenario where we're feeling emotionally disconnected, when we're in a scenario when one of us is feeling dysregulated, when we're in a scenario where we're not aligned on our values or visions, or hey, when we're in a scenario when one person is feeling supported and the other's not, we can go to a specific section of our agreements and say, how do our agreements define that we are to navigate this type of situation? So the idea here again is that we're moving from, I assume this is how I can serve the relationship or the partner in this scenario, to definitively this is what we agree is in best support of us. But I'd love to hear it from your perspective too. I mean, the other thing that Tori and I did is that we started by creating these agreements separately before we came together, right? And so she created the things that were really important to her. I created the things that were really important to me. We had discussions about them and brought them together. But when you think about the process of creating agreements for you, when you were kind of going through the document that you created and that you shared with me, like what was the starting place for you in developing these out?
I think the starting place is always really getting honest with myself about what do I really want and what do I need. And sometimes when you're creating something new that you've never experienced before or never had before, it might feel challenging to know where to start with that. But for me, sometimes the starting point is like, if I don't know what I want, how do I can identify what I don't want? Mm-hmm. And was the starting point of looking back at my past relationships and looking at what didn't work and saying, I want to create agreements around how to prevent these things from happening again. Yeah. Right. And so that was sort of the beginning for me around understanding what my values are. Mm-hmm. What are the things that are most important to me? What are the things that make me feel loved and seen? And what are the past painful experience that I don't want to repeat? What about for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there were everything that you said for sure. And I think also, with Tori and I, when we started to sort of run into our first walls in our relationship and we started to hit some of our growth edges together really, really early in our partnership, I started to realize that there were certain things that we were communicating to each other about, this is what I need in this moment. This is how I feel seen in this moment. And I started to notice that we were starting to have a repetitive number of things that we were saying. Tori would say, something to the effect of, hey, when we are experiencing an emotional edge, I really need you to stay open, for example. And when she, for example, was providing feedback to me on an area of my life that I can be better in or can improve in, I noticed that I really wanted her to approach that with, I first acknowledge you for the things that you are doing well. And also, here's something that I noticed that you can probably improve in. And so I started to pick up on these patterns, right? And I think that's really where the cornerstone of an agreement comes down to, right? It's like, what are the things that we need the most? And for most of us, we have a pretty similar set of things that provide support and comfort to us as we're navigating moments that would be that are ruptured or dysregulated and so forth. But to the point that Tori shared, it ultimately where this all starts in terms of what those patterns are, it all starts with the things that are the most important to you. And we spent one of our previous episodes talking about this idea of values versus virtues, right? And so that's a great frame for determining the things that represent you the most in your relationship, and so or represent you most as a person. And so I would encourage you to go back and watch our values and virtues episode. Look really closely at the virtues that you embody and also that your relationship embodies. I think that can be a really helpful foundational tool for getting these agreements in motion. For us, though, when I was thinking about my values and virtues, the things that were the most important to me were A, things that I first had to become self-aware of, and B, I had to be able to clearly communicate them to Tori in a way that they felt grounded and real, to a point where she was like, I get it, and I understand how I can actually utilize these. So for me, I can speak to what my values and virtues are, which the first set of three are honor, love, and respect. And to me, those are sort of the cornerstones of my masculinity, right? If I don't feel honored, loved, and respected, then I don't necessarily feel supported in my masculinity or seen in that. Right. And so whenever Tori and I are navigating something, whether it be a decision or a challenge or a victory, I always ask her to start with honor, love, and respect. And I'd love to pause on those for a moment, because you've heard me share them with you for, basically it feels like essentially every single moment we've navigated together, those have come up in some form, whether direct or indirect. So when I first shared those with you, I'm curious, how did those land for you, and how did you begin to integrate those and show up to me in a way that allowed me to feel that way?
Well, I think that's honestly a good question for you to answer around like how did I make you feel that way? But, I think taking time to listen to your partner and hear what's important to them, and having this could be an agreement, for example, of like, I listen to understand, not to be right or not to respond, but like, I'm really here to get to know you as a person and what makes you feel loved, honored, and respected. Because like at the ethos of what these are, it's like, why are we here? And what are we creating? What is the point of our relationship? Right? Are we doing this haphazardly just for fun, just for shits and giggles, just to have somebody to like do life with? Or are we coming together with an intention to create something with meaning and purpose and intentionality? And so I just want to like set that as the frame. It's like, it comes back to like, why are we here? What are we doing? And what are we doing it for? And when we got clear about that, of like, we're here, we're both ready for a serious long-term devotional commitment, right? Like that was because there's a lot of different types of relationship styles out there that work for different people at different phases in their life and their journey. And so like, we had to first get clear of like, what kind of relationship do we want to build and why is that important to both of us?
Absolutely.
Like before you can do any of this other stuff, that's the question you need to like ask. Are we both on the same page about what we're trying to build and where we're trying to go? And then we can get into some of the nuts and bolts of how do we get there and how do we make this engine run and how do we check in with ourselves to see if we're like progressing towards that. But then in terms of your question around, I just want to make sure I understand. So your top values are, love, honor, and respect. how did that land for me? Is that the question?
Well, first, I mean, yes, and also I'll give you a kind of a clue into what this evolved into was, when I was sharing this with you a moment ago, like honor, love, and respect are beautiful virtues, but they can oftentimes feel a little bit ungrounded, right? It's like, what does that actually mean to honor someone? What does it actually mean to love someone? What does it mean to respect someone? I think it probably means something a little bit different for everybody, right? But for me, I had started with that with Tori, and then I think there was a period of time where that felt a little bit vague, and so then it got actualized for me when I was able to express to her that really the way that you can honor, love, and respect me is through appreciation, affirmation, and acknowledgement, right? So I'd love to hear from your end firstly, when I did share those initial values with you or virtues with you, those are virtues. When I initially shared those virtues with you, how did they land, and did they make sense? Did they click? But also when we started to like sort of implement it further through these ideas of appreciation, affirmation, acknowledgement, how'd you begin to integrate that into the way that you interact with me, particularly when I'm in states when A, I'm either dysregulated, or B, when you have something that you want to share with me that might be heavy or it might be heavy.
Well, I mean, to be totally honest, this has been a learning process, and I haven't always gotten it right. And I've misstepped many times, but because we have these agreements, it's something to come back to. And it's a muscle you get to flex and you get to develop. Right. And so your need for, because these are needs too, like as much as they're virtues, they're needs. If you don't feel loved, honored, like love being cared for, thought of, I think care and love are like in the same family.
Yeah.
And respect and honor are aspects of love, like ways you feel loved. But how does that like translate into the lived experience? That is translated through appreciation, affirmation, and acknowledgement, right? And so learning to speak the language of how you want to be loved, which is I want to hear what I'm doing right. I want to be celebrated for how I'm showing up. And I want to hear the things you love about me out loud. For Kyle, words of affirmation are a big love language for you. And you can tell what is a love language for you when you feel like something's missing. Like if you're not getting words of affirmation and you're craving it and you're longing for it. So look at the things that you're longing for in your relationship that you would love, but maybe aren't being fulfilled. And I know this is one of the ways that Kyle has like taught me, because you have to teach each other. You have to be willing to like share and teach the other person how to love you well. We don't come with a built-in understanding and system for like, I just know exactly how this person feels loved and appreciated and
yeah. And hey, by the way, for those that, have not gone deep into the love languages, everybody gives and receives love significantly differently. So the way that you give and receive love is not necessarily the way that your partner does. And I think it's really, really important that even if you were to step even further back from these agreements, if you don't understand how the other person gives and receives love, you're going to constantly be feeling mismatched with them.
But for honor, for example, it's like we honor each other in private and in public, right? So when we go out into the world, we only speak the highest level of like affirmation and celebration about the other person,
right,
publicly.
Yep.
Right. And we're each other's biggest cheerleaders and fans, and we're going to edify and speak life into each other. That is so important. And that's one of the ways in which Kyle feels honored. And these are things, again, that we've learned over time when we were first putting this document together, because this is like had iterations.
Yeah.
Right. Like we had an outline at the beginning, and then we've gone back and like added things as we've learned. Oh, this actually needs to be something we put into this document, right? And then we come back to over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly why it's a living and breathing document, just as your relationship is living and breathing. And in terms of, actually like implementing these values, that's a lot of what the agreements are about. So, of course, for me, appreciation, affirmation, and acknowledgement are elements of how I can feel honored, loved, and respected. But really, the reason that we love to start on these agreements with our virtues and values is because the the agreements are in some ways a map of how we support the other partner's virtues and values, right? In the case of Tori, just to speak to her for a moment, and I'd love to hear you chime in on this, but Tori showed me over time, as I shared a little while ago, that the most important thing to her is truth. Like the most important thing. I'll pause on that for a moment. I'd love to share my perspective, but I know that this comes up for you when I share it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like truth is the highest value or virtue that I hold. And to me, it's synonymous with love.
Yeah.
Love and truth to me are primary. And if you love me, we are in truth together. Like to be in love is to be in truth together. Yeah. And so that requires clearing a lot of distortion and shadow. And it requires us to do a lot of deep internal work on where am I withholding truth from myself and from my partner? Where am I not being honest? Where am I filtering myself? Where am I tiptoeing around something? Mm-hmm. Where am I telling the other person what they want to hear? Because I'm afraid of the truth. But for us, if our intention of our relationship is to not only create a relationship where we are loved deeply and held in the safety of all that we are, where we can bring the full truth of who we are to the relationship, not just an edited, filtered version of ourselves, which is the intention of our relationship, that all of us gets to show up here, then we have to practice that. And, not only is that the intention, but we want our relationship to make a meaningful impact in the world. It's not just for us. It's for something larger than us. And that we are conduits of a deeper and bigger mission and message that want to be expressed in the world through our love and our relationship. And so, truth is something we come back to again and again and again.
Yeah, it's paramount for Tori for sure. And it's something that she's really taught me a lot about. The secret to living in truth for me, and something that we practiced from the very early stages of our relationship, is that the reason that we don't express ourselves fully is because we're afraid of them finding something out about we're afraid of our partner or the world finding out something about us that we don't want them to know.
It ultimately comes down to the fear of being seen.
100%. Yeah. And particularly being seen in the areas that you don't want to be seen in, right? Being seen in your shadows and your darkness and your brokenness and so forth. So of course, naturally in any relationship, you're going to start to navigate into those areas. They're going to come up. Now, the way that we can feel safe when we enter in to those parts of our life is we have to trust and form that trust with our partner that you are only doing this out of love. You will only see me and experience me through the lens of love. And that was actually a cornerstone of the initial development of the intention behind our agreements was we are committing and agreeing to see each other and experience each other through the lens of love. And why that's so important is because now I know that I can feel safe in feeling truthful with Tori, even about my shame and my shit, because when we experience it together, she's going to love me in it. Mm-hmm. She's going to experience me as love. She's going to feel love, and she's going to see me as love. She's not going to judge me. Really important part of our agreement as well. She's not going to further shame a part of my life where I already feel shame around. If anything, she's coming there because she wants to honor and respect me and affirm me and acknowledge me. Again, my core virtues and values, even in the challenging parts of my life. And here's what that does as a result, right? By me being able to experience my truth with her freely and unconditionally, I can then open more to her, right? I can then allow her to experience more of me. And here's the ironic part is that openness is a core value of Tori's, right? She wants to experience me as open. And a question that we have as a part of our regular check-in process is how open am I being? How open am I? Not just to her, but to life as a whole, right? I can experience more openness by living in more truth. And then as a result of being more open, Tori feels more connected, which is also a deep and important value to her. And frankly, the very, very core component of a healthy relationship is feeling connected. And connected, by the way, is not we're doing all these things together and we're creating life together. Connected is the feelingness of it's a sensation of a cord that connects you to. And you know it when you have it. Everyone at some point has felt this cord before.
It's an attachment. It's literally It's an attachment.
It's a metaphysical attachment for sure. And for those of us that at some point we've all felt it, because at some point we have physically been connected to our mother by a cord. That cord is not much different than the one that Tori and I experienced in our relationship. But to be able to nurture that cord and that connection, we have to stay open to each other. And to stay open to each other, we have to be in truth. Once we start hiding, once we start falsifying, the openness turns to closeness, the connection breaks, the presence is no longer there.
Now we're in protection and survival mode.
And the relationship slowly starts to struggle, right? And of course, part of the agreements as well is once you get to that place, how do you reestablish connection? But I say this all to say that you could spend the first several months of your relationship just really understanding the importance of each other's virtues and values and how to navigate back to those. But you can't get to those unless you understand your love language. And you can't get to that unless you spend time on really tuning into what are the things that make you feel the most supported, most alive, right? So I'd encourage that stack in terms of how we actually get to the point where we can say, these are the things that I value the most. And again, what this does in terms of the development of the agreements is it helps you to then create a map of how I come back and serve my virtues and values, right?
Yeah. I want to just add that, like, before you start creating your relationship agreements, the primary first thing you need to do is create an intention, right? We said, I'll just read you the intention that we have for our relationship. We enter this relationship as two sovereign individuals, choosing partnership with intention, love, and mutual accountability. Our goal is connection, repair, honesty, and growth, held with tenderness and truth. We agree to see each other through a lens of love, curiosity, regulation, partnership, and repair. This document is alive and will be revisited as we evolve. But that is primary, right? That is the first thing on the list. Why are we here and what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
And what are we doing it for? And what is the goal? If you and your partner have never had an established conversation about what it is you're creating and building together, then you're already on a on a shaky foundation and shaky footing. If one person feels like you have all this and it's unspoken and you think y'all are on the same page, but really you're not, that's going to be felt in the relationship, because you're going to be wanting to go in one direction and then your partner's going in another direction and y'all have misaligned either intentions or goals or, and that can create disconnection in the partnership. It can create a lot of insecurity in the partnership because you're like, I'm not sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
The other thing, so we've got intention first, and then we've got our core values and virtues. And if you're unsure about, like, what I think is, again, important, if you're struggling to understand what are those for me, think about the opposite,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what's the opposite of openness?
Mm-hmm.
What's the opposite of honor? What does it mean? How do you, what's the opposite of respect?
Mm-hmm.
What's the opposite of connection? Disconnection. So what's for me, presence is really important, to feel your presence. Okay. So the lack of that was you're distracted or unavailable, right? The opposite of truth is dishonesty, lies, distortion. So let's talk about the opposite side of these things.
Mm-hmm.
What are the areas in which, what does it feel like in your body to feel dishonored? What does it feel like for you to feel disrespected? And how do we come back from that if that's an experience that you're having? Have you ever felt disrespected in a relationship?
That's a great question. Have I ever felt disrespected, dishonored, or not loved in our relationship? Of course. Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that whether the tricky part with navigating relationship is it's hard to know whether it's self-inflicted or whether it's inflicted by the partner or not. So have I felt that before? Of course I felt that before, but was that your intention? Probably not, right? And so again, this is what the agreements can be helpful for, is establishing clarity, particularly when you walk into environments or situations that would feel edgy, dysregulated, and so forth. And so what Tori's mentioning is really, really important here. And I think that actually helps to kind of expand a little bit further into what are the core elements of the agreement, so that when we do walk into scenarios where we experience the opposite, let's say, of our values, how do we come back into connection and presence and openness and so forth, like what you're describing. So to recap this, when the agreement's broken down, it starts with the core intentions, like we described. It moves into the core virtues and values, which we just went into. And then it kind of progresses for us from there into each of these categories of our agreement. And the way these categories are structured, and they're all designed around what Tori described, is like, if I'm experiencing the opposite of my value or virtue, what's the map to navigating back to a place of wholeness, right? And the way that we constructed them, I should say I constructed them in this way because I'm a very linear thinker. So I see things that build naturally on top of each other. Tori does not always operate that way. Tori sometimes she operates more in a spiral, which allows her to see life through like a really beautiful and very open lens. And we kind of combined that approach into the structure of these agreements. But the idea behind them is that they are not necessarily they're ordered in a way in which they build on each other, but they can be used in a way where you can flip to any page of the agreement and you're going to find value in it. But particularly, you're going to find value that applies to a specific situation. So a good example of this would be, for us, it always starts with regulation as being the first thing, right? If we are dysregulated, it is very, very difficult for us to navigate life as a whole. It's very difficult for us to navigate our partnership. And we'll speak to that more in a moment. The second piece is timing and energy awareness, right? And we'll speak to that further. What that mainly refers to, though, is kind of it dovetails off of regulation. It all talks about how do we ensure that our nervous system has the capacity to support whatever the moment we're in is. From there, it goes into communication and emotional safety. This is exactly as what you can imagine it is, but the main thing that I would highlight here is around boundaries. And we'll get to that in a moment here. And then from there, of course, it naturally kind of evolves into conflict, repair, and feedback, right? How can we deliver feedback in a way that is supportive to the partner and well received by the partner? And then it moves into mutually balanced growth. So how do we grow together? One thing that I see in partnerships that can be really disruptive is a hierarchical structure where one partner feels like I have to do everything and the other partner, and I have to do everything and feels like the other partner has to do nothing. If you're on that pendulum, it can be a really, really dangerous place for a relationship. And then, of course, we move into love, polarity, and partnership. And really, what are the things that we want to do to make sure that we feel fully supported, mainly so that she can feel fully supported in her feminine and her ability to express herself. And I can feel fully supported in my masculine and my ability to hold it down, so to speak. And then from there, we move into our lifestyle and our vision and our shared ground. And what we mean by that is like, what are we actually creating around? What are the sort of core elements of our goals, things like family, business, health, home, vision, and so forth. So that's how we've structured these agreements over time. Again, they're broken down so that we always know where to go depending on what the situation might be. And then again, there's systems that we have in place to then review these agreements to review questions around these agreements and our ability and to measure them on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. We're soon, in about a week from now, I'm going to be reviewing these on an annual basis as well. So again, you're probably noticing even in some of my language here, a lot of this feels like the same way we would approach a business. We would have a set of plans. We'd break those plans down into weekly goals, monthly goals, quarterly goals, annual goals, and we'd have systems to review those. It's the same thing in a relationship, right? And so again, I just want to highlight this because I think this point is so important. What if you approached your relationship with the same intention, the same intensity as focus as your business? How great could your relationship be? And by the way, for the entrepreneurs out there in the world, I know you know this statement just as well as anybody else. A solid foundation at home means everything else can soar. The times that your creations have struggled the most are likely times in your life where you've had a personal rupture somewhere. So if we can repair that quickly and we can establish a strong and solid foundation at home, that home being in our bodies and physically at our home, we can open up the channel for abundance much more greatly in the creations, businesses, and so forth that we bring to the world. So I got a little bit off track from your question, but I think these are all really important pieces to answer your core piece, which is, what do we do when we're in the opposite? And so I think that's just like a natural transition into regulation and nervous system management. So again, this is kind of category one, if you want to call it that, of our agreements, the first step in the journey when we're looking at our agreements. And with our nervous system capacity master over here, I'd love to hear about regulation from your perspective. And in particular, how do you manage conflict when you're in a dysregulated state?
Yeah, before I go there,
sure.
I just want to say, and I think I've said this before, the quality of your life is dependent on the quality of your relationships. It's not dependent on how successful you are, how much money you have, what people think of you. It ultimately, when your relationships are dysfunctional, you feel it in every area of your life, right? You have been there when your relationship is struggling and you cannot pay attention at work. You cannot focus in the gym. You cannot get the things you need to get done because it is draining your life force or taking up so much mental and emotional capacity that you can't show up for the rest of your life. And so this is so important that we prioritize, especially our most primary relationships. If whether that's with a partner or if you're single, with yourself, because if your relationship with yourself is dysfunctional and struggling, it is something that you're going to feel in every area. Now, when it comes to regulation, regulation is our ability to feel safe in our bodies and with another person. To be like the byproduct of regulation is openness. Connection is a byproduct of regulation. And so if we want to maintain love, connection, polarity, spontaneity, flow, ease, fun, all of the things in your relationship, then regulation has to be something you're paying attention to. Because the moment you become dysregulated, you fall into patterns of survival, scarcity, fight, flight, freeze, stress responses, shutdown, and disconnection, which then puts a wedge between you and whoever you're in partnership with. And you start to operate from a survival-based system that is identifying likely your partner as a threat, right? Or something in your environment as a threat. And so when that happens, and sadly, like in today's age, I mean, we are primal animal, like have animal bodies, right? And so there is a part of our brainstem that is constantly 24/7, whether you know it or not, always tracking for threat. It is tracking for safety, danger, or life-threatening danger. Those are the three things it looks for all the time. And if your partner looks at you with a certain look, if their tone changes, if they ignore you or don't answer the phone because maybe they're busy, that part of your brain is signaling danger, danger, danger. And how you deal with that signal, either you're able to tell yourself, hey, I hear you. I sense that you're trying to get my attention. And I can come back to truth. What is true? Am I truly in danger? Or is this just part of my system that is picking up on something? And what's the story that I'm applying to it? Is it true? Is it really true that I'm in danger? Is it really true that this person has now become my enemy? Because when we get in dysregulated states, you stop seeing your partner through the lens of love. It's almost impossible to start to give your partner the benefit of the doubt. To see them, oh, they're not doing this to hurt me. They're doing this because they love me. Now, all of a sudden, your partner who you love and adore and care for is not a friend. They are an enemy and you're at war. And that is dangerous when you're living in states of unsafety for long periods of time. We could go so deep into the nervous system piece, but ultimately conflict arises typically, not always, but typically from dysregulation. Or if there's a conflict, then we often fall into dysregulation. So why we have regulation first as primary is how do we create safety in ourselves and in the environment, so that we don't react from an unconscious place, from a wounded place, from a shadow, from a young inner child part, right? Let me just also preface this by saying, we've created these agreements because we failed in these areas at times too. Like we've created these because we needed them as benchmarks and as ways to create structure around this, because we're not perfect either. We have wounded parts that get triggered. We have tender aspects, sensitive aspects of ourselves that can feel scared. And how do we take care of those parts of ourselves for ourselves and with each other? Does that answer your question?
Beautifully. Yeah. I think that the other thing too that's really wonderful about agreements is that sometimes you need something physical to look at. You need to be able to reference something that you created in a regulated state when you are in a dysregulated space, something to bring you back to who you really are, right? And what you really want and how you really want to be loved and really the things that you care about.
Because you'll forget all of that in a dysregulated state.
In an instant, you'll immediately, that's what I was about to say, you will immediately become tunnel visioned, and everything that you thought about this person and everything that you agreed to and all those wonderful elements of your personality that are mature and can handle things like an adult and a big boy or a big girl go right out the window in a dysregulated state. And we immediately return back to the inner wounded child that at least some of us still is. Right. And so that's why I think what are you laughing at?
I'm just thinking about before we met.
Yeah.
And you saw this piece of content that I put out online, and it got like 1 million views on Instagram and TikTok. And it was like, you want to know why I'm single? This is why I'm single.
Tell them about it.
I don't want to be the only adult in my relationship.
Right.
Because I said, if I rewatched it the other day, I was like, if I can take responsibility for regulating my nervous system, if I can learn how to repair in moments of conflict, if I can not shy away when hard conversations need to be had, and I listed a few things, and then you can too. And I was at that time, I had been in relationships where the other partner wasn't able to meet me in some of these things.
Yeah.
And it's just so like awesome and beautiful to see, and this is why obviously you're one of the many reasons you're my partner, is that we both choose to show up in these ways. It's not saying I'm going to take accountability for my inner child and my wounding and my triggers, and the other person doesn't. Like, it takes two people to create a beautiful relationship. And I have all the love and compassion in the world for people who are in relationships with others that maybe aren't doing the work, because I've been there and I know how painful that is, especially when you've been in a long-term committed relationship and maybe somebody steps into doing this work on themselves and the other partner hasn't. And the strain that can put on a partnership is really real. And I think that's a different conversation for a different day about how do you navigate that if one person's doing the work and the other person isn't.
Yeah.
But we're coming at this from like, if you're beginning a new relationship at the beginning, or you have another partner who's like, you know what, let's do a hard reset. Let's come back to building a foundation that actually works for us, because the way we've been doing things isn't going to get us where we want to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I do want to reference one thing that Tori mentioned earlier too, which is just that this is not just designed to support people that are in partnerships. When we think about regulation is like the core component to living a fulfilled and joyful life. Right. And so an easy way to begin the journey of desiring, to integrate some of these practices around regulation and nervous system management really comes down to one key question that I shared earlier, which is, how bad do you want it? How bad do you want your life, the life of your dreams, the partner that you seek to call in, et cetera? If those things are not of the utmost importance to you, nervous system capacity management is not going to matter to you either. Now, for me, the reason that I invest so much of my energy into this on a daily basis, which we'll get to in a moment, is because I deeply desire my life. I deeply desire my dreams. I deeply desire my goals. And in the case of this partnership, I deeply, deeply desire Tori. She's the woman that I've always wanted to have beside me. And I'm so incredibly grateful to call her my partner and get to share spaces like this with her. I mean, she's absolutely magic, for those of you that don't already know that. And so there's no other option for me than to have regulation top of mind for me each and every day, because I will not be able to live the life that I have always dreamed of if I do not. It is a very clear blockade to getting there. And so again, this is not just for necessarily partnership specifically. It might be the process to calling in your partner, but even greater than that, it's the process of creating the life that you desire. And to have that life, you must regulate. You must regulate. People in dysregulated states, I promise you, are not living the life that they most deeply desire, or they might not even be able to see that life. So the question then becomes, how do we regulate? And I'd love to, I know it's exciting because Tori and I have so many tools, and you'll hear people refer to these tools as technologies in a way, right? Because they're these systems that we can put into place in our life. And sometimes they are physical tools, sometimes they are mental tools, sometimes they are spiritual tools, but they all serve us in the same way, which is bringing us back to a clear and conscious place to operate from. And so for me, one thing I've noticed about life is that life is designed to dysregulate you. It just is. And unfortunately, the world that we live in now is even more chaotic. So the world was already somewhat chaotic even prior to the evolution of our species. If we think about it, like if I go all the way back to the animals that existed before us, to the apes and to the tigers and to the elephants and so forth, like there's this level of dysregulation that those species are always living with because they are literally surviving each and every day. They are fighting for their survival. Their job, I'll never forget watching this documentary years ago about these penguins that live on this island, and there's a mother and a father and a baby penguin, and literally the mother and father trade off every day walking like 3 miles to jump into these crazy intense waves and rapid waters to dive into, hope to find food with no guarantee to bring back to keep their baby alive. With, by the way, no guarantee that when they get back, there will even be any food left for themselves. That sounds like a dysregulated lifestyle.
Yeah, they're not thinking about how can we have fun today. They're thinking about how do we meet our basic needs.
Right. And so my point there is that like life is designed in a way to be dysregulated. It's our responsibility to return back to a state of regulation. And so, and I should say just one additional note to that, the modern world we live in is even great, as we put us even into even greater states of dysregulation, thanks to the quality of our air, the pesticides in our foods, the people that we interact with, the commutes that we're forced to take, the 9-to-5s that we're tied to, the news cycles that we witness, like everything is systematized and designed to dysregulate us. And so we have this even greater responsibility than our animal ancestors to really come back to that state again of clarity, consciousness, and calm above all. And I'd love to play with this question of like genuinely for our listeners out there, when was the last time that you felt calm? I'd encourage you just to sit with that. When was the last time you really felt peace in your body? And if that is a hard question to answer, that I think that these practices that I'm going to share will become even more important.
Yeah.
Please.
Well, that is such a good question. When's the last time you felt calm and at ease in being, not doing anything, but just existing, just being? Because if it's been a long time, it means you're in survival. And, frankly, the majority of, the American population by far is living this on a daily basis. A lot of us don't, for me, until my late 20s, I didn't even know what regulation felt like in my body. I had been living in such a chronic state of dis-ease. I had normalized such high levels of stress and dysregulation. I thought it was normal. And so, yes, of course, my relationships reflected that because internally my environment was also chaotic to some degree, right? And so it starts with you. It starts within you of using practices to create that inner state of calm and peace and ease, and which says, I am safe. That is what it ultimately says is I am safe. I am safe to exist. I'm safe to feel. I'm safe to be. I'm safe in my body. And if we're not feeling that, there's such a big ripple effect in the world. But I would love to just give you guys, like, what are some of the agreements that fall under regulation for us? Like, what does that look like practically? So we've got 5, and they are: we do not process conflict when either person is dysregulated. I call that the red zone. In my upcoming course called Groundwork, I teach this framework about how to understand and identify what state you're in. If you're in a dysregulated survival state, if you're at safety and baseline, or if you are in abundance and creation. And so if you're in the what I call red zone or below the line, that is not the time you need to be having hard conversations with your partner. So that's one. We don't process conflict or like bring really deep, heavy things to each other if we're in a state of, if we're below the line. 2, we regulate before reacting. We name our emotional state honestly. So saying, I'm activated. Like, hey, how are you doing? I'm feeling closed right now. I'm feeling triggered right now. I'm feeling calm. I'm feeling tired, overwhelmed, regulated. We also use a framework called HALT. So if I can sense that he's a little off, I can say, are you hungry? HALT is hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. If there's any of those present, let's check in there first, right? And then another thing that we've shared is sometimes we'll do you want to be heard, held, or helped, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's not the moment to try and fix your partner's problem. Sometimes they just need to be heard. Sometimes they just need space. That's the last thing is, do you want to be held, heard, or helped, or do you need space? And then we take space when needed without punishment or fear, because space is a tool for grounding and not for disconnection. I'm taking this space not to disconnect from you. I'm taking this space so I can go regulate. We had this happen yesterday where I was like, you know what? I'm going to put a pause on this conversation. I can feel myself getting activated and triggered. I can feel what the sensations feel like in my body, and I can see how they're being expressed. You took a walk and I had some food. So I did one of the things I need, like hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Okay, I'm hungry. I need to have some food and you're going to go take a walk. And then we came back together after regulation and finished the conversation. And that's the last point here. The last agreement is we return for connection after regulating.
Yes.
So there's always the reconnection after that space and that pause.
Yeah.
So I hope those are helpful in helping you understand what we mean by this and how it's applied in everyday scenarios.
Yes. Yes. And I think that it's really, really important to, like, one thing that I want to just highlight there is, or two things I want to highlight there is, number one, being, again, safe in naming your emotional state honestly and not fearing that is going to drive disconnection. If it does, if me saying to Tori, I'm feeling angry, causes her to close up to me, I'm no longer going to feel safe emotionally expressing myself transparently to her. And that is a core agreement with her, or a core value of hers, that she wants me to maintain openness. But for me to maintain openness, I need her to be able to receive my emotional transparency with love, with tenderness, with care, with acknowledgement, affirmation. You can hear how the virtues and values tend to trickle down into these individual agreements. That being said, once you establish that this is a safe space for us to be able to communicate emotionally and openly with each other, then we're able to state where we are at before we move into what can otherwise feel like a thorny conversation at times, right? So it's really, really important for us. And I think Tori shared really importantly, like, that should be the first step in the process of checking in on each other's state of regulation, is being able to openly share where we're at and allowing that to be a stop sign in the conversation if it needs to be. And then, of course, the next piece is recognizing that, like, space is okay. We can take space from each other, and we can actually, that can be a signal as a sign of respect and not a sign of disconnection. Me saying, I actually want to separate from you for the next 30, 60 minutes, or sometimes even a couple of days, so that I can come back to a state where I can show up for you with honor, love, respect, truth, openness, etc. We have to trust that that's a signal of, I love you and I want to be able to show up to you from a place of love. And it's not me saying I want to be disconnected.
Yeah. And if we're going to take that long, we'll say, we're not going to just like go. I don't think we've ever taken days to come back to that.
No, but the point
it is to say
it's available is my point.
For sure. Yeah. It's available, but it's important. It's very different than just like someone leaving and not returning for a few days and then being like, okay, I'm back and I'm ready. It's like saying, if you're going to take space, just saying, I'm going to name the time you need, or I'm going to take the afternoon and then we can pick this up tonight. Right. Yep. That settles the nervous system of your partner to say, they're not abandoning me. They're not leaving me.
Yep.
They're coming back. And for those of us who are anxiously attached, that is very, very important. So That's the basis.
Yeah, agreed. And I think so. This kind of naturally transitions into, for us, if you read through our agreements, so much of it is around how do we ensure that when we approach each other in conversations that might feel challenging or thorny or might produce anger or sadness or something other than peace and neutrality, which is 90% of your relationship is not going to operate in peace and neutrality. There's always new things that are being added, and there's always life that's going to approach you. If you're living in a neutral state, then you're probably not living in a state that you really desire to be in, because you're not growing, and growth requires stepping into edges. Yes?
I was also going to say, two things can coexist at the same time.
100%.
And what I mean by that is you can be having an emotional response, and that can exist. And you can also say your partner has a request or something has come up and something has changes and they need to change an agreement. You have an agreement and they need to break the agreement, or they need to modify it, change it, because we're about to get into timing. But so say Kyle and I haven't agreed on activity or commitment that we're going to do. And Kyle comes to me and says, hey, I need to do something else. Can we do it 3 hours later? I can feel disappointed and also honor his request. I can say, I hear you. That's fine. I can be flexible. And I'm sad about that. Right. And we can hold both. It doesn't mean I'm disappointed in you. I can be disappointed or sad about the thing. And I can also honor the request that's being made. Mm-hmm. And I think nuance in relationship is so real and so important. And so I want to also really give you guys examples of where sometimes it's not black and white. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's a lot of things happening at the same time. And you've got multiple feelings internally where you're like, I want to be flexible and understanding and respectful and honor my partner. And I'm also bummed.
Yeah. And this, and frankly, this to kind of explore another element of these agreements, this is where really clear communications and emotional safety play a big role in this, right? Because if I can't clearly state my need to Tori of, hey, I need to adjust our plans by a couple of hours, then I slowly create an unmet need for myself and may slowly build up resentment to Tori over time. On the other hand, if she doesn't feel safe communicating, this makes me feel disappointed, then all of a sudden she starts to develop an unsafe relationship with me and is unable to express herself and is suppressing and begins to close, which comes back to breaking one of her core values and virtues with the relationship. And so the point here is that we want to establish safety early in the relationship so that we can openly communicate our needs really, really clearly, and also the emotions that come up when those needs are shared really, really clearly. Ultimately, we want to choose transparency over anything else, and also create safety in what might come up as a result of that, right? And I think truthfully, the biggest piece that comes up for us a lot around this idea is that we do not want to end up in a position in the relationship where we're sacrificing our own needs on behalf of the other partner or the relationship.
Because at the beginning of this, we talked about our intention is that we are two sovereign individuals choosing partnership.
Yes.
That doesn't mean we abandon our sovereignty or our own needs for the partnership.
Right. Which is why boundaries are so incredibly important. And frankly, that's something we still learn. I know that's something that I still practice pretty often, or when am I going to draw the line to creating safe? When am I going to draw the line to create stillness? When am I going to draw the line to create silence? When am I going to draw the line to create safety for just time for myself, when all I want to do is I want to be with her, right? And so it's also about me understanding how I can best serve myself through the relationship by communicating openly and freely and trusting that she can hold that and that we can still maintain connection through it.
Also, if these things as we go are feeling we're bringing up a lot of things in terms of communication, emotional intelligence, nervous system regulation. We're going to get deeper and deeper into this. These are things I would go ahead and say none of us were taught.
Yes. They don't teach you this in school. Right?
So don't hear us and start to beat yourself about all the things you're not doing or all the things you don't know how to do yet. a lot of this is learned in practice,
Mhm.
and therapy is awesome.
Yeah.
And there is so much of this stuff can get developed. These are skills. These are relational skills. And that you don't learn a skill by thinking about doing something.
Well, and
you develop a skill by doing it, by failing, by getting up and doing it again.
Yes. 100%. And that's why we were sharing earlier in this conversation that like these agreements are living and breathing. And a lot of these agreements were created because we failed, we struggled, we hit a wall, we didn't do something right to support each other. These agreements are created on the other side of that. So frankly, these are mostly created as a result of not getting it right the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh time, getting systems of support around us, whether it be through things like therapy, coaching, other circles of people that we love, or just by supporting each other. And then as a result, creating these agreements that come from that. These are not something that you just necessarily produce because you just know how it's supposed to operate. No. You learn because you hit something and you say, that didn't feel good. That conflict didn't feel good. Our lack of ability to repair here didn't feel good, etc. I'm not feeling served. Something feels off. And then these dovetail as a result of that.
And frankly, this is exactly why we're sharing this, to give you a framework, an outline, an idea of an example of how to do it. You don't have to do it our way, but this is what we've learned has worked for us. And I wish I would have had an example long time ago to help me understand what is possible for my relationships. Because the reality is so many of us are just throwing spaghetti against a wall and seeing what sticks. And again, hoping and praying for a good outcome. But let's move on to the next section, which is around timing and energy awareness, because this has something to do with nervous system capacity. So we have 5 here, and they start with, we are mindful of timing, bandwidth, and nervous system capacity. So again, this sort of goes back to below the line, above the line, or green zone, red zone, which again, I teach in my upcoming course and program Groundwork. If you're interested in that, you can send me an email to hello@torigordon.com and starting at the beginning of the new year, which is really going to give you the foundational groundwork for how to create safety within your own system and give you the emotional awareness and intelligence that you need for your own life, but also that can be translated into relational dynamics like this. So knowing that at the end of a long day or a long week, you might be a little on the depleted side. Is that the right time to be bringing forth all of your criticisms and complaints or your list of things that you've been, writing down about the things you want to talk about, right? Just be mindful. That's what we said. We're mindful of timing, bandwidth, and nervous system capacity. If I know Kyle is spinning 14 plates at the same time and his plate is so full, as his partner, it's not that the thing I want to share isn't important. It's about if the thing that I want to share is important, noting when the best time to share that is the way I'm going to get the best outcome.
Yeah.
Versus just I'm going to pile this on, and then that might be the thing that knocks you over, right? Because you're just lacking the capacity at that moment. Do you have anything that you want to add on that?
No, I mean, I'd love to hear this part from you, and then I'm happy to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number 2 is we don't initiate heavier analytical conversations late at night at the beginning of or at the end of draining days. Exactly what I just said.
Frankly, at the beginning of days either. In short, give yourself a chance to be regulated.
Yes. Before going deep, we ask, is now a good time? Either person can say not right now, and it is respected without judgment. I'll give you an example. We were coming home from holidays with family, and so much comes up with family, especially when you're bringing partners home and they're seeing the dynamics of your family. And oh my gosh, they're starting to see a part of your life they've never seen before and all the things that can come up from that. And as we do on our long 12-hour drive back to Austin from the beach, we have so much time to go deep into our relationship and the things we were excited about and that we loved and all the things. And I can't remember, but by the end of this long drive, there was you brought up something about my family. And, I said, I would love to talk. I'm totally open to talk about that, but not now. And you were like, okay, let me know when is a good time, and that was respected versus trying to force or push something on your partner when they're setting a boundary or saying, I don't have the capacity for that. Because sometimes, this is about to open a whole nother can of worms that I want to go there with you, but I don't have what that's going to require right now.
Yes. All I'll say is that curiosity can kill the cat. Don't be the cat. At least not always. We want to explore and learn what our partner has to share with us. We also want to explore the questions that come up, especially the ones that feel edgy. Those are the most important ones. And also, I think what we've shared, at least in terms of this first 2/3 or first half of our agreement, is that timing really matters. Timing really matters. Context and setting to any conversation, particularly in your relationship, particularly around things that are hard to navigate, really, really matters. So ultimately what this all does, regulation, communicating openly, clearly about boundaries and needs, being mindful of timing, being mindful of each other's current state, whether it's red, yellow, green, or somewhere in the middle of that. Ultimately, what it does is it protects your connection. And that's the most sacred and important thing in partnership. And it avoids unnecessary ruptures. So much conflict that we experience in our relationship, in relationships as a whole, we probably can look back at and be like, what were we even arguing about in the first place? And typically what it is that there is nothing that you're arguing about. You're just disagreeing, or you're in a state of or you're disagreeing because you are in a state of dysregulation alone. Now, where does this all end up taking us to? And this kind of moves to the latter portion of our agreements, is it allows us to understand, especially if we practice those first 3 components, it allows us to stay in a state of we are each other's allies. We are each other's supporters. We are each other's biggest friends. We are not each other's enemies. As Tori had painted earlier, by not taking these steps in relationship, either with yourself, with another, with a partnership, etc., you can really move into a place of this person is my enemy. No matter how much I love them, I can move into that tunnel of thinking that this person is here to hurt me, and all of my inner wounding comes up and all of my inner protective mechanisms come up. So for us, it's really important to continue to, again, see things through the lens of love and not to weaponize each other's challenges, right? We don't, when either of us are sharing something openly with each other, especially when it's something that's really, really tender, we meet that with the same level of tenderness in which it's shared. We would never use that as something to poke at or something to hurt the other person with. But I know I've been in partnerships before where I've shared something openly with my partner about an insecurity or a challenge that I'm experiencing in my life. And when we were in a state of dysregulation or disagreement or conflict, it has been brought up and dug even deeper, and it has created massive ruptures that at times have almost led to relationships completely failing as a result of that. So we're here to not judge, which is a core element of our relationship, to not weaponize each other's wounds. And most importantly, one thing that comes up a lot, and I'd love to hear your thought on this, because I feel like this is almost like, if you have your primary set of values and virtues, I feel like this one sits right underneath it, which is like, we are seeking to understand. Mm-hmm. And it feels so important to me as we navigate conflict together, that I hear it come up from you a lot, this concept of wanting to be understood.
Yeah, because that, I think, is a primary. The desire often comes from something I need, right? Mm-hmm. Something you didn't have when you were younger. And I know that there was a lot of times in my life where I felt misunderstood or miscategorized, and how much pain that's created for me. And so oftentimes there are themes that you'll notice in your life that keep presenting themselves. And this, to me, is part of your soul's curriculum, part of why you're here and what you're here to heal in this lifetime. And for me, one thing is around being misunderstood, and the fear around, well, if I'm seen, they're going to misunderstand me. If I express myself, they're going to judge me or misunderstand me. Right. And so I've also learned that, not everyone is going to see me or understand me. And I'm going to have to learn to be okay with that. But to know that I'm in a partnership where the intention and the desire is to understand is important, and it's helpful for me.
And I feel the same way. I mean, I think that the desire to be understood is so incredibly important, because if not, then you're both communicating from completely different definitions of what's important. If I'm not willing to understand Tori, and I'm only willing to experience her experience through my own lens, we will immediately lose connection. And above all, she's not going to feel seen or supported by me. She's going to feel consistently that I'm only trying to fix, right? And that's such a dangerous place to get to in a relationship, when you say, my way is the only way. So and that I'm here to apply pressure and I'm up here to apply tools and techniques to solve something, when in reality, all you want is just to be heard and understood. And so I think what this ultimately comes back to, and this actually kind of moves on to another agreement that's really important for us, is that we want to be in growth together. We want to be shared in all the things that we do. And part of being understood is also, again, supporting each other's evolution without, like I said, trying to fix it, right? Maybe it's just as simple as just like, I see you, I feel you, I get it, and I'm with you, and I'm here, and I'm not going to leave. Sometimes the presence alone is the thing that provides the most support to the other person. And as men, more than anything, particularly as the problem solvers of the centuries of our time of humanity, we have to get out of that headspace when we're providing support for our partner. And we have to recognize that sometimes the most masculine thing that we can do is just be the tree, the rooted tree amidst the storm, and allow our partners, particularly our feminine partners, emotional intensity and infiniteness to simply be expressed. Sometimes the greatest healing for Tori just is in her being seen, felt, and understood.
Yeah. What a woman doesn't want to hear is how she should be feeling, or what she shouldn't be feeling a certain way. I want to know that I can bring the full spectrum of my emotions, and he's not going to try and fix them or solve them for me, that he can just witness. And that's like in the next section of our agreements, which is communication and emotional safety. The best way he can create an environment for safety for me and vice versa is, and this is my favorite agreement from this section, is we make room for the full range of expression. Emotional, calm, messy, sensual, unsure, tired, afraid, ecstatic. And the things that like pop out to me are things like unsure. I don't know. How are you feeling? I don't know. I don't know how I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling afraid. I'm feeling scared. A lot of times when we're feeling something quote unquote negative, it's because there's a scared part of us. Mm-hmm. And then there's a protector part that is trying to manage or protect that more tender aspect of ourselves. The part of us that feels shame if it's expressed. The part of ourselves that feels guilt for not having it together, for not being more polished, for not being more whatever, fill in the blank, right? Mm-hmm. But in order to create the safety that is needed for us to be all that we are is to say all of you is welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. And this comes right back to something that, is equally applied to me in a lot of ways. In the same way that Tori, in the expression of her infinite emotional capacity, sometimes just wants to be seen and understood. It's the same way for me that, as I had shared, core virtues and values for me are that when I share something or when something's coming up for me, sometimes the first thing that I want is just to be appreciated and acknowledged for the things that I am doing right, or the things that I am showing up. And sometimes I just want to be seen in all that I am versus be analyzed and fixed and adjusted. And so what I've asked from Tori before is the same thing that she's asked from me, which is to soften our collective intensity towards each other. And first, just acknowledge and witness each other for who we are and what we're being, or the moment that we're in, before we try to get into feedback and repair and so forth. And then when we do step into that, the most important thing for us that we've learned is that it's mutually balanced, and that, like I shared, our growth is collective. Hey, I have growth to do here. You have growth to do here. We can communicate openly and freely about that. And we're not necessarily creating a hierarchy in our relationship. Like I shared, I've seen a lot of relationships struggle before, where one person feels like they're carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders, and the other and perceives that the other person is in great shape. And that's been something that's come up for Tori and I before as well. As being super, super growth oriented people, it can sometimes feel like, hey, I've got all this growing to do. You have done nothing. You have nothing to do, or vice versa. And so for us, a big element of one of our kind of ladder agreements is the idea that we hold each other to the same standards, and we accept and acknowledge that we are both still growing and that we both are on this path together. So what this does as a result of this all is it allows us to then come back to a continuous state of connection. What we're doing throughout these agreements more than anything is we're seeking to create harmony in our partnership, right? We're seeking to create harmony in terms of our emotional states, in terms of our states of regulation, in terms of our collective growth, in terms of how we approach feedback to each other in that journey, and how we repair and come back to the most important thing for us in an agreement that I highlight quite often, which is this idea that we're always going to choose each other. Over and over and over again. The first person, if any room that I walk into, the first person I see is Tori. In any scenario in life, I prioritize her over others. If I'm out having one thing that always stood out to me with this is like, I always imagined that the person that I'd end up with would be if I was doing the thing that was the most fun to me. Like I was at a concert seeing my favorite artist and I'm in the midst of having the best time. And that person tugged my shoulders and said, you know what? I'm not feeling good. I want to go home. I would stop everything I was doing and I would honor what her request is. And ironically, Tori and I had actually been in that exact same scenario and I got to experience that and I got to choose her. And so if the point here is that like I prioritize you, period. You are my priority. You are the person that I will choose over and over and over again. You're the person that I will see in every single room that I walk into. You are the light of my life. And also to the world that exists outside of us, we are each other's biggest fans and we are each other's number one champions. Both really core elements of the relationship is that if you were to come to either of us and say, hey, Tori, tell me about Kyle, or hey, Kyle, tell me about Tori, you would hear the most beautiful representation of the other person. And you'd be like, I cannot wait to meet your partner.
Absolutely.
We choose each other over and over and over again. Yeah. And what that does is it creates deep, deep, deep partnership, which is why you'll hear with us, this is less of, I think there's an evolution, and I think it's occurring in society right now, this evolution from like girlfriend and boyfriend to partners. We are choosing each other in relationship. We are choosing each other in business. We are choosing each other in marriage. We are choosing each other in fatherhood and motherhood. We are choosing each other in life. We are locking arms and saying, I'm willing to do this with you. We don't have to do this alone anymore. And I think what that does is it creates something that I found really, really important in relationship, which is that there's never a structure of I'm feeling threatened by how big this person is becoming. Instead, I get to say, because we are partnered in this co-created life, when Tori wins, that's a win for the family. We were just having a conversation on the way over here about this concept of like breadwinnerness. And I'm like, whoever wants to take it, let's go get it, because there is no competition between us. That's a victory collectively. And I've seen in so many partnerships, I've seen one partner feel threatened by the other partner's bigness and actually try to reduce them as a result of that so they can maintain whatever perceived stature there is.
That comes from a deep wound and insecurity. If you feel the need to make your partner smaller so you can feel bigger, you got some healing to do.
You got some healing to do for sure. And so I remember one thing that a friend said to me years ago was when we were celebrating something that one of our friends had done. They had gotten a new job or made some money or whatever. And we were like, that's a victory for the whole. That's a victory for the community. And so I would encourage you even to take that approach into all of the circles that you operate in, so that when you see someone win, it's a win for you.
Right.
Remember, we are a mirror of everything that we surround ourselves with. So if my friend's like, hey, dude, I just closed this massive deal, I'm like, I just closed that massive deal, right? His light, his abundance, his victory shines directly back on me. And it's the same way in our partnership. So this is exactly why we have this core agreement, which is around supporting each other's dreams and purposes and best selves. When Tori wins, I win. When I win, Tori wins. We are collectively growing our family together. And I'd encourage you in your partnerships, again, whether they are with friends, whether they are with romantic partners, etc. I started playing with something with Tori that was really transformational for me in our partnership, which is I started to refer to everything we do as our family. Now it's helpful because we also have an 80-pound, very hairy son named Leo, big golden doodle. And it feels like we have a family because there's 3 of us. It's no longer just 2 of us. But that practice of integrating the term family into our vernacular and our conversations has been really, really big for me, because it makes me feel like we have this collective whole that we get to serve together.
Yeah, I love that. And the other thing I'll say too around mutually balanced growth and commitment to our goals and our dreams is something that I had to, this is a growth edge for me because I had never experienced this in a relationship before. And it's agreement that we have, which is we don't keep score, because it's actually funny. You know, I put out a piece of content that went pretty viral recently about all the ways you love me and show up for me. And it got a lot of amazing feedback, and there were a lot of triggered people that
For sure.
did not like this piece of content at all. And they were like, what do you do for him? If he does all this stuff for you, what are you doing? How are you serving the relationship? Sounds like you're just, you know what I mean? So many accusations, so many things that came from it. But we don't operate or live in a relationship where we're saying, oh, I do all these things for you. And what are you doing for me? Or if he gives me something, I used to, like my previous relationships, I was always afraid that they were going to bring these things up later and be like, remember all the stuff I did for you? And so lived with an anxiety of, I feel uncomfortable receiving from my partner because I'm afraid they're going to use it against me later.
Yeah.
To get me to do something they want me to do. And it's going to be a tool. It's like a carrot they're dangling, and then they're going to take it away from me.
Yeah.
And that caused a lot of pain for me in my past relationships. And so when I got into this relationship, and he is such a giver in so many ways. I mean, he speaks every love language very fluently. It was uncomfortable for me because I was afraid to accept and receive it because I was afraid it was going to be used against me.
Yeah. And PSA, by the way, second public service announcement of this podcast today is, and I commented this on Tori's post when she put this beautiful piece out that was really, really, it honored me deeply. It respected me deeply. It loved me deeply. It affirmed me deeply. It acknowledged me deeply. And it appreciated me deeply. It hit me in every single place that I like to feel. But there were some comments made again around, wow, he's doing all of these things for you. What are you doing for him? And one of the things I shared with one of the men that commented this is, men, we don't need more things done for us. Trust me, we can do all of the things 10 times over. It's one of our greatest gifts. And that's not what I want. That's not what I ask from Tori. I very rarely ask her to do things. I mean, occasionally we'll split responsibilities and so forth. But what I ask what I ask directly and indirectly from Tori more than anything is, Tori, help me be a better man. Help me be a better human. Help me be a better partner. And just from her lived existence, just from Tori's pure presence in my life alone, I am uplifted and expanded. She has been the greatest teacher and greatest guide to me, just simply by her existing in my space and me being able to feel her, watch her move, have her course correct me, have her call me out, have her bring things forward that I'm not willing to look at. So I just would invite that consideration into relationships, that it's, in terms of this idea of keeping score, you can never measure the impact that the partner is making on you. It's never a quantity of items. It's the quality of the impact that that person has on your life. And your quality of impact on my life has, of course, been exponential and epic in every single way. So no scores here, no scores. This kind of takes us into this last piece of this conversation, which is, and I think of this as the last piece because to me, you can't get to this without every single other element of these agreements being in place, which is a shared vision. We cannot create, what, did something come up for you as I said that?
Well, I just skipped polarity.
No, we just spoke through that actually.
Well, we just didn't speak to their, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Do you have one other item you want to share in that?
Well, I just wanted to say around polarity is driven by you being able to be in the role that is most natural for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that polarity of having two, you know what I mean, two opposites that attract. If you think about two magnets, if you're repelling each other, it's likely because you're both in your masculine or you're both in your feminine, right? And that is a repulsion. It's not a sexy energy,
yeah,
at all. And so learning how to, and for me, this has been an evolution of learning how to soften into my feminine, learning how to receive, learning how to allow myself to be in flow and and experience the fullness of my beingness. Not so much what can I achieve? What can I produce? What can I do? How can I be more productive? How can I prove myself that I'm a worthy and good partner? Actually, that is the thing that repels the polarity and the attraction in the relationship. And so being able to maintain that is part of our agreement, and which keeps and the playfulness and the spontaneity and the polarity alive, because there are a lot of, I think this is a conversation that I think we could have on this podcast separately, but there are a lot of relationships, long-term relationships, and I don't know what the statistic is, but the amount of sexless relationships that are out there, people are having less sex than ever. And so I think there can be a bigger conversation around polarity that we can do at some point.
Absolutely. And I'll just comment on this quickly, is just, I think that the reason that we've lost a sense of polarity is because we've started to, frankly, so many of us have started to play the roles that we're not naturally designed for.
Because
right?
we are seeking this equality.
Right. Or society, or we've just been forced into that position, right? There's some of it, Tori's right. Sorry to interject, but I was just going to say, in some cases, you're totally right. Some of it is we're seeking equality. And so, you have women who are playing roles that would be conventionally designed for men. Not a bad thing, but also in some cases may not be where that person naturally leans into. Maybe it's what they think they need to lean into. And then there's, of course, other cases where it's just force, where there's no other choice, where, you think of the single working mom as like a perfect example of this, right? So this just comes back to what Tori and what I was just describing a moment ago, which is just, we try to create a relationship where the things that the partner naturally leans into, first of all, are supported and championed. And secondly, are the things that I allow myself to receive from her. So this comes back to this she allows herself to receive from me. This comes back to the be and do idea and this idea of keeping score, where it's like, it'd be impossible to keep score because I don't want her to do things for me. I don't need that from her. What I need her is her beingness to be the thing that provides to me. And by allowing that and not creating some system where that we're keeping score, it allows her to lean more deeply into her feminine. And as a result, have that be the thing that fills me and supports me the most. And as a result, by her leaning into allowing herself to receive, it allows me to lean more deeply into my masculine, and it allows me to do more for her. And as a result of that, the polarity continues to grow.
Yeah, because if he comes home from a long day and I'm stressed because I've been trying to do so much all day, that he would rather come home to me being soft and open and like doing something I love versus like being stressed out. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot that we could talk about that. And as we could continue to go really deep into that, but these are also parts of, the agreements that we set with each other.
Yes. Love, polarity, and partnership. They all find their way into an area of our agreements. But I'll come back to what I shared a moment ago, because I think it's really important, which is that, again, I sometimes think really linearly. And when I think about these relationship agreements, I see them all building up to this final piece, which is shared vision, right? We cannot co-create towards the place that we're going to if we've not established a foundation that allows ourselves to get there, and that we've not continued to maintain and nurture that foundation over time.
And if you want a 5,000 square foot house, you got to have a big ass foundation.
Yeah.
The bigger the life you want to create for yourself,
right,
the stronger the foundation you need to be able to sustain that over time. Otherwise, you're building a house of cards.
Yes.
You're building a house on sand that's going to wash out when the tide gets high.
Yeah.
Right. So we're fortifying. This is a virtue, or we're fortifying, protecting the vision with the foundation.
Exactly.
Right. And this is something I'm super excited about in terms of, again, it's like, where are we going in the future? Whether that be our businesses, our health, our travel, our family, like, what do we want to create together? And in, next weekend, and I have an agreement. We've put it on, we have a shared calendar. We've put it on our calendar. We've made time and structured it so that we can sit down and have a visioning day where we are thinking into the future, into 2026. What are those goals that we have? What do we want to do? Where do we want to go? Do we, what are our personal and our professional goals and visions? And I think we're going to, eventually take you guys through that process of how that unfolds for us in the event that that's helpful for you. But that's one of the ways we're actually implementing, our agreements around vision and lifestyle and shared goals.
Absolutely. And I'm super excited to explore that with you all as Tori and I dive deeper into that next weekend. I think the biggest conversation or the biggest framework that we're going to be integrating in that conversation is making sure that we are aligned on the core areas of our life: family, finance, business, health, home, dreams, physical bodies, etc. Like it can go for quite some time, but there's going to be a variety of energetic bodies. There's a great episode we released on that a little while ago as well that'll help to structure the framework for how we approach our shared vision. And finding alignment on that shared vision is incredibly important, because one of the things that Tori and I know and have learned over years is that what you focus on magnifies. And so we want to make sure that our shared and collective focus as a family is targeted at the same thing so that we can create the things that we desire. And yes, it might be houses and cars and all the things, but the thing that's the most important to both of us is that we have a healthy, beautiful, nurtured relationship. And we do that through making sure that we're aligned on the actions that we take so that we operate jointly as partners, right? And this comes down not just to where things are taking us, but also how the actions that we take today. And one simple practice that you can put into place before you're even thinking about all the things that are to come in the next 5 to 10 years are: before I act, we decide. So before I take and make a decision or act on a decision that is going to impact me or us, we run it by we run it by each other, right? I particularly run it by her. I've always said to Tori, and I will continue to honor this throughout our entire relationship, my love, is that you make the final call, right? I am here to present. I am here to support. I am here to advise. I am here to guide, but it's ultimately a shared and collective decision. And again, for the men out there, we have to be really, really careful that we're not acting only on our own will and intuition and so forth, because what that will do more than anything is it will break partnership. Just like it would in any business, if I did not go to my co-founder and said, I'm going to make this decision, that person is eventually going to say, I can't do this anymore. Right. And that's not what we want in any partnership. And that's certainly not what we want in our romantic relationship. So, again, as we're kind of moving towards the end here, I think the easiest way to find the fuel, motivation, and connection to develop these agreements out, particularly that last piece around shared vision, is to really say to yourself, is this what I want? And how bad do I want it? For me and my connection with Tori, it's all that I want. All that I want is to deeply invest into her. All that I want is to deeply invest into our family. All that I want to do is love her with all of my heart every single day. And that's my motivation for wanting to create this structure around the partnership. I've been in previous partnerships before that have not had these agreements. Now, why have those agreements not been in place for those previous partnerships? I didn't have that desire. I didn't have that deep connection to the other person. And so you can use that as filtering mechanisms. You can use the agreements as, even if there's a part of you that says, I don't want to create agreements with my partner, then I would really encourage you to ask yourself, is that the right person for me? Is it the right relationship and partnership for me? If it's your person, this will be easeful. This process will be fun. And this process will be of deep service to you.
Yeah, this has been a fun and just really fulfilling part of our relationship, because it is the container for it. It is what holds us in moments where we're challenged. And it also gives us so much direction for where we're going.
Yeah.
And that creates a sense of stability, right? Stability in relationship is a sibling of safety.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? They're sort of bedfellows. They hang out together, safety and stability. And if we're feeling unstable within ourselves, if I'm feeling unstable in an area where I'm growing or I'm expanding, because let me tell you, when you're in seasons of expansion, it can feel destabilizing. But this is our anchor. This anchors us when we're being stretched to open more, to receive more, to create more. What holds you and anchors you.
Yes.
And that's what these do.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll share on this is that this is not designed to create a perfect relationship. And these relationship agreements that we've described today are not the ones that are necessarily for you. These are the things that have been of service to us. I do think parts of what we shared are things that have been passed down to us that we know are of service to everyone, regulation being the paramount piece there. But the idea is that we encourage you to find ways to create this on your own and start from a place of what doesn't make me feel good. And how do I come back to a place of feeling good? That's it. What doesn't make me feel good? How do I come back to a place of feeling good? What sits in the middle there are the beginning and the initial and the seed of your agreements. So I'll finalize this and close this by saying that I'm so deeply in love with you.
I'm so deeply in love with you.
I'm so grateful to feel the motivation to want to create containers like this for our relationships. It's been such a gift to me to have that sense of purpose in our connection and to want to continue to pour in to you month after month, day after day. I will always choose you over and over and over again.
Same. I love. It is an honor to be your partner and to do this with you and to create in this world and to be held and to be seen and loved and witnessed in all of my ways. And yeah, we're just getting started. And I hope and pray that this was useful to you guys to see just an example. Like, so this is not a prescription. We're not saying our way is the only way, but we're making our way and finding our way. And so far, this has really supported us. And we hope that it supports you too in whatever journey or part of the journey that you find yourself on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On that note, we love you almost as much as we love each other.
Yeah. And we're going to come back with a part 2 where we give you a little bit of a quicker rundown of how we actually check in with each other. And hold each other accountable to these agreements. Exactly. So come back for that next week. And that'll be it for this week on How to Stay Human.
Until then, thank you.
See ya.